Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel. This is my review for the 1954 remake of A Star is Born, which is actually the first remake of the 1937 movie of the same name. 2 years ago, I reviewed the third remake of this movie, the one with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, and if you've seen any version of A Star is Born, then you pretty much know the plot of it. An older performer meets an up-and-coming performer, and he tries to help her rise in stardom, while he himself is starting to decline in his own stardom and personal problems. It might be the same plot, but the characters are different, and it's a different industry. The original film and this version are mostly about the film industry, and then the later two versions were based around the music industry. So, admittedly, there are a few differences here and there, and I saw this version for the first time last month when Turner Classic Movies was doing their stay-at-home film festival, and it was the movie that opened the festival. And since I went into this version of A Star is Born having seen one of the other versions already, you might hear me compare the two off and on, but I'll just say right off the bat that this movie is really good. The plot itself doesn't really carry a whole lot of surprises, so on that angle, I can't say it's great, but again, I've already seen one of these versions of the movie, so I kind of knew where the plot was going to go. But I was excited to see what differences this movie would have with the Lady Gaga version, since they both revolve around different industries. And in a way, this version is more interesting to me because I'm more interested in the film industry than the music industry, especially that old classic era of Hollywood. So in that aspect, it just felt a little more accessible to me. I don't know if that makes a whole lot of sense. Another thing that helps with this movie is that you have two fantastic leads, James Mason and Judy Garland, which I gotta say with Judy Garland right now, this is actually the first of her movies that I've seen as adult Judy Garland. Because when I typically think of Judy Garland, I think about the little girl that was in The Wizard of Oz. And when I saw last year's Judy, starring Renee Zellweger, I didn't quite understand why people said that Renee Zellweger looks like Judy Garland. It just didn't really click with me. And then I saw this version of A Star is Born, and I'm like, okay, now I've seen adult Judy Garland in a movie, and I can understand why so many people say Renee Zellweger looks totally like her. And Judy Garland in this movie is really good. Outside of being a really great actress, she has a lot of history with singing, so that lends itself to the musical elements of this movie. And it's, in a way, not so much a musical. I mean, it has musical segments to it, but they fit more within the context of the film, given that this is about the film industry. Kind of like Singing in the Rain, which there's one particular thing in this movie that I think this does better than Singing in the Rain. One thing that I think this movie does better than Singing in the Rain is how it incorporates its song and dance numbers. Let me first of all say that the songs and dancing in Singing in the Rain are phenomenal. They are masterful. But with this movie, there's one sequence that feels like it goes for too long, but it's in the context of Judy Garland's character shooting a film. It's not like in Singing in the Rain where Gene Kelly pitches an idea and then it goes into sort of this fantasy world where there's a dance sequence that goes on for too long. So the dance sequences here fit more organically. James Mason is also really good in the movie, and he and Judy Garland work well together. But honestly, there wasn't a whole lot different from his character compared to Bradley Cooper's character in the most recent remake, or even Jean Dujardin's character in The Artist, where he helps with an up-and-coming star only for his own stardom to just go down and he gets depressed. And if you've seen any version of A Star is Born, you know how it turns out. And I will say it's still powerful when it happens, but it just didn't hit me on the same emotional level that the 2018 remake did. And that's actually the main reason why I prefer the 2018 version over this 1954 version. Another reason had to do with this film's history, because the version that Turner Classic Movies showed was a restored version to make the movie 3 hours long. Back in 1954, the movie was actually cut down, and a lot of the scenes that were cut out of the movie were lost. That was until 1983 when the movie was fully restored from 2.5 hours to 3 hours. And let me just say this, I have an issue with movies being 3 hours long because I think there are just a handful of movies that warrant that runtime. A Star is Born, the restored version, is actually one of them, because for being 3 hours long, there was actually not a point in this movie where I, for a second, said, this is too long. It just had a great pace to it, but the thing that kind of bugs me about the restored version is that the footage that got found is audio only. So in order to bring these scenes back to life, they had to use a bunch of still images, and maybe it's just me, but the still images are pretty distracting. It just takes me out of the movie every time they pop up, and it's hard for me to really get fully invested. But thankfully, it's only in the first half of the movie, and then the rest of the movie from there on out is just as it is. So if you're nervous about what I just described, but you can get past it, then you are in for a treat. Because this remake of A Star is Born, while I prefer the 2018 remake more, it's still very well done. It still has some great moments to it. The musical numbers are fantastic. Both of your leads are incredible. And again, for being a 3-hour movie, it never feels like it drags out or stays longer than it needs to. So it's definitely worth seeing in your lifetime. If it had had just the amount of emotional impact that the 2018 version did, then I would give it my highest rating. But just in comparison to that version, it didn't hit me with that same emotional impact, but still, it's a really good movie nonetheless. And there you go, that's my review for the 1954 remake of A Star is Born. And now I want to know what you guys think about the movie. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, leave a comment, support my Patreon page, follow me on social media, and until then, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.